Let's look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah!
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. Now, mandatory minicamp is officially over, or at least the first week of mandatory minicamp is over. And of course, after a week of practice, a week of trainings, and a week of competitive team periods, the Detroit Lions had quite a few players looking to stand out in mandatory minicamp. Whether it be starters, backups, or role players, we had quite a few players step up to the plate and show lots of flashes and show that they were ready to compete for a roster spot. And today, we're going to give credit to some of those players. We're going to look at some of the biggest standout players from the last week of mandatory minicamp, give them their credit, and kind of talk about what their roles could be and the roles that they earned in their first week. Now, today I will not be talking about rookies, as that will be a whole separate video for tomorrow. Today we're looking just strictly at veteran standouts, and tomorrow we will be taking a look at rookie standouts from mandatory minicamp. But with all that being said and all that out of the way, let's get straight on into taking a look at this week's biggest mandatory minicamp standouts. Now, I don't know if there was a bigger standout this week than wide receiver Quintez Cephus. Quintez Cephus is somebody that went into the NFL season a year ago and wasn't expected to start. Went into the NFL season, and actually, even since he's been drafted, wasn't expected to really be the number one wide receiver. And yet, early into week one, once Tyrell Williams suffered his potentially career-ending concussion, that's exactly what Quintez Cephus was expected to do. He was expected to step up. He was expected to play the wide receiver one position, and for a couple of weeks there, he played very well. He finished out the San Francisco 49ers game with a nice touchdown and 2-point conversion all by himself. He had a couple nice receptions versus Green Bay, and I mean, overall, really until the injury happened, he was playing like a low-end wide receiver one. He was on pace for, I believe, over 600 to 700 receiving yards and 8-ish touchdowns on the season, and that was before Jared Goff got his confidence back. That was before the offense really started to click, and that was before they really started to figure out their offensive identity as the Detroit Lions. But fast forward to this offseason, and once again, Quintez Cephus is being underestimated. The Lions signed DJ Chark, they draft Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown broke out, they have Josh Reynolds, who wasn't on the roster early in the 2021 season, and of course they have Khalif Raymond, who saw career-type production a year ago. But Quintez Cephus has outplayed all of them so far in mandatory minicamp, as he has made the catch of the day, he has made tough receptions, he has just absolutely excelled in the competition for a wide receiver spot. And honestly, I think Quintez Cephus at this point may end up being a lock for the roster unless something significantly changes over the next month. Quintez Cephus is a very different wide receiver to what the Detroit Lions have. A lot of what the Lions have is speed, route running, and separation, which is what Jared Goff really likes to throw to, but Quintez Cephus doesn't necessarily have all of that. He's a decent route runner. He can create separation for sure, but Quintez Cephus, I'd say, is the only real threat on the Lions offense that is big and physical, right? I think he's the most physical of all our wide receivers. I think he plays that style of football where if he's not going to go around you, he is more than capable of going through the defensive back and fighting for the ball in the air. And I think you saw that quite a few times last year, even in his shortened season, right? In the fade ball versus the 49ers, he just simply outjumped and outmuscled that guy to the football and got a pretty easy touchdown. On the 2-point conversion, right? He went up and won the football over the defender and got his feet down. He had several plays where he very nearly either got the reception or did make a really tough catch against the against the Green Bay Packers in week 2. He was, I would say maybe even interfered in the air, but he nearly came down with an Odell Beckham type catch in just the second week of the season because he's not afraid to go play through contact. He is somebody that fights through contact and more times than not wins that contact. And because of that, I think that is a big reason he is showing out in minicamp. That physicality is on display, the route running is on display, the strong hands are on display. And at this point, I think Quintez Cephus is a pretty safe lock to make the 2022 Detroit Lions receiving core. Now, DeAndre Swift is another player that is starting to really find his stride. DeAndre Swift last year was very good for the Detroit Lions, having over 213 touches for 1,069 all-purpose yards and 7 receiving touchdowns. DeAndre Swift did miss a few games here and there in the 2021 season. I believe he missed 4 games from about middle of the Thanksgiving game, and I believe returned after the Denver Broncos game, if I'm not mistaken. I think returned versus Seattle. If maybe he returned versus Seattle, maybe a week before that. But he played in 13 games for the Detroit Lions a year ago. And as I just said, put up pretty good stats, right? 1,000 all-purpose yards, 7 all-purpose touchdowns, over 200 touches. But he does have some injury concerns. He's never played a full season in the NFL, but this season, DeAndre Swift and the coaching staff very clearly put some time and some effort into making sure he wouldn't miss time this season. Deuce Staley came out and said he had multiple conversations with DeAndre Swift about potentially playing through some of the lesser injuries, right? Potentially pushing himself to play a little bit more even when he's a slightly banged up, right? Not forcing him to play through a torn ACL or anything like that, but play through some of the bumps and bruises that you're eventually going to get as an NFL running back. And DeAndre Swift very clearly took that conversation to heart, as early in training camp and before contact was even allowed, DeAndre Swift was physically bigger. He was very visibly a more strong player, right? His arms were bigger, his legs were bigger. He seemed to just be a little bit more built in the 2022 preseason, and a lot of people said that was going to impact his route running and impact his twitchiness and his explosiveness, and really it hasn't. Although DeAndre Swift has gotten probably 5 to 10 pounds heavier and 5 to 10 pounds bigger this offseason, his explosiveness is still there, and he has not lost even a step, and if anything, he's gotten even more explosive this offseason. It's been shown in his receiving, it's been shown in the running back drills. His explosiveness and speed are absolutely still there of where the Detroit Lions want him to be and where he was a season ago. The only difference, he's a little stronger. He is a little bit more, I guess, prepared for NFL contact and for NFL punishment. And hopefully DeAndre Swift can continue to play more and more games for the Detroit Lions. Now, the starters are not the only players to have shown out, as some of the backups had very good mini camps as well. David Blau especially, I think, was the most impressive quarterback throughout mini camp. David Blau, of course, only played with the 3s and the 2s throughout mini camp, but he vastly outperformed backup quarterback Tim Boyle as he continues to throw touchdowns. David Blau was accurate, he was decisive, he was quick with his decisions, and he is, as of right now, winning the quarterback 2 job, right? As where last year he was the quarterback 3 and never really had that opportunity to play up as a quarterback 2, right? Tim Boyle, despite how poorly he played in the regular season, always seemed to have that spot on lock, and even in the preseason, when he was outplayed by David Blau, he continued to be the starter. David Blau this year, however, is again vastly outperforming Tim Boyle at the quarterback competition, and this year the coaches seem to be taking that into consideration, as David Blau has actually overtaken Tim Boyle at the QB2 position. He is leading the team down in competitive drills, he is leading the team in red zone drills. I mean, during the red zone drill last week, I think he was 5 of 6 for 4 touchdowns in the red zone, right? There was a competitive drill where he drove the team 81 yards in 3 plays with no timeouts to score a, as far as the competition and scenario, the game-winning touchdown with the 2s and the 3s. David Blau has more starting experience than Tim Boyle. He played better as a starter than Tim Boyle, and as of right now, Tim Boyle is now again on the chopping block as David Blau continues to just improve and get better this offseason for the Detroit Lions. And then Shanezystra, the tight end from last season, who didn't really get a huge opportunity to play after fracturing his kneecap versus the Denver Broncos, is starting to show out in training camp as well, with the absence of guys like Derek Deese Jr., the undrafted free agent, as well as James Mitchell, the 5th round selection. Shanezystra has had the opportunity to not only work with the backups and get a lot of time, but actually work a little bit with the ones and continue to impress. He's had a touchdown every single day of minicamp in competitive team drills and had multiple receiving touchdowns from Jared Goff. Him and Jared Goff are starting to develop a little bit of that chemistry as the receiving threat tight end, and Shanezystra, somebody that wasn't really talked about this offseason as a potential guy to make the roster, all of a sudden is back on the radar as somebody that could end up on the final 53. Now, a couple other players that aren't having as good of camps but still warrant recognition. Those guys include Levi Onwuzurike, somebody that, again, kind of like DeAndre Swift, has put on a lot of bulk, somebody who's put on a little bit of weight, become more powerful, and become more explosive. He is somebody that, again, just because of the nature of minicamp, right, contact isn't really warranted yet, so you can't really get a good idea of how physical or how explosive he is against an actual offensive lineman, right? You got a little bit of that in competitive team periods, but you haven't really had the opportunity for him to go after the quarterback yet. So although we haven't had that opportunity, he does look bigger and is very clearly more explosive this offseason. And then Trinity Benson has also come into consideration quite a few times, has been written about quite a few times by the Detroit Lions media, as he has really kind of found his spot as that wide receiver 6 or 7, really found that spot and found a nice connection with David Blau, and those two continue to connect on deep plays throughout competitive team period. So he's another guy that could be pushing for that wide receiver's position. But with all that being said, that is all for you guys today. Let me know what you guys think about these breakout players. What other players do you want to hear about from minicamp? If you want to hear about a certain player, I can talk about them as well. But with all that being said, that is all for you guys today. Thank you all so very much for watching. Until next time, and as always, go Lions.